This is KWAI, Honolulu, 1080 on the AM dial.
And now it's time for Healing in You, the program all about good nutrition, integrative medicine, and total wellness. Healing in You is hosted by Dr. Terry Shintani, medical doctor, nutritionist, and author of the Eat More, Way Less diet and the Good Carbohydrate Revolution. Also co-hosted by Dr. Diane Nomura, administrator of the Hawaii Health Foundation, along with triathlete and fitness expert Dr. Ruth Hydrick. Healing in You is brought to you by the Hawaii Health Foundation, healinginu.com, and sponsored by Down to Earth Natural Foods, First Hawaiian Bank Prime Time, and co-sponsored by Bragg's Live Food Products.
All right, everyone, welcome to Healing in You Radio. I'm Dr. Shintani, and for tonight we have a very special show for all of you. We have a special guest, which I'll introduce in just a bit, who are the founders of the movement of attitudinal healing, Dr. Jerry Jampolsky and Dr. Diane Cirencioni. Healing in You Radio is a public service of the Hawaii Health Foundation and sponsored by Down to Earth Health Food Stores and Bragg Live Food Products, and you, the listeners, who generously contribute to the Hawaii Health Foundation, who supports this show, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And tonight we have a very special show, and this show is called How Your Belief Systems Determine Your Life. And to talk about this very pertinent topic, we have two very esteemed speakers, or two of my, who I call my mentors, who I've worked with for many years. Dr. Jerry Jampolsky, who is sitting on my right, is a Stanford trained child psychiatrist who started the movement, or the Center for Attitudinal Healing, many years ago, back in 1975. He has worked with children with catastrophic illness, with adults with catastrophic illness, with grieving, with many topics that have to do with how our attitude and how our belief systems determine our life. He is an award-winning physician. He won the 2005 American Medical Association Excellence in Medicine Pride in Profession Award, and that's by the national, the association, the American Medical Association. And he is with us tonight. He started the movement called Attitudinal Healing many years ago, and today they have, with his wife, Dr. Diane Cirencioni, have visited over 60 nations, and some 180 centers have been started by their inspirations. 180 centers and groups for attitudinal healing have been started around the world. Dr. Diane Cirencioni, his wife, has a degree, has a PhD in clinical psychology, a master's in organizational behavior, and actually trained in Hawaii for many years with the Hawaii State Hospital System, and both of them consider Hawaii their second home. Welcome, Dr. Jampolsky and Dr. Diane Cirencioni. It's a pleasure to have you on our show.
Thank
you
so
Terry.
much.
It's good to be here again.
Well, tonight's topic I really am excited about is how your belief systems determine your life. And that's kind of a bold statement, but I think it's true. What does that mean, how our belief system determine our life?
Well, what we believe, we experience. So what we believe, we put thoughts in our head, attitudes in our head. That's saying that if something's going wrong in our life, which comes from our fearful ego, find someone to blame. And that's a belief system that the world has today, because so much fear is going on. We begin to believe that the only way to deal in this world is attack and defense. That's a belief system. And we feel that if one begins to have inner peace as your only goal, and you check that out with your belief system, does that really bring you peace? And when we begin to find things that will allow us to feel peace and change our belief system around that, we begin to have a whole different kind of world. We see the different world differently, and we see our relationships differently.
And I'd add to that, too, that, belief systems are really your belief system, each one of us has one, and it's made up of diverse beliefs, beliefs that have been formed from the time that we're born. And they may be religious beliefs, maybe philosophical ones, they could be cultural ones. Usually it's a composite for all of us. And these beliefs are held by the ego structure to be absolutes, to be true, until they are challenged. And in some environments, in some more fundamental environments, they are rarely ever challenged, because there's usually consequences to challenging a belief system that is held to be true by the larger community. So oftentimes people have a belief system when, from the time they're born, it just keeps getting reinforced from the very original structure, that foundation, and becomes stronger. And at the end of their life, their belief system's the same, only it is just more concretized. So it's not easy to change your belief system because, number one, most people don't know that you can change your belief system. So a lot of attitudinal healing is the realization that you can actually change the thoughts that are in your mind, and to challenge what is not working for you. Does your belief system, are you happy? And that's like a key fundamental thing right there. And if you are, then that's excellent. And if you're not, then we're saying it's possible to challenge the individual beliefs that you have that make up your life, that determine the choices you make, that affect the challenges that you have. And then the choices, you're obviously making choices that are not giving you happiness within your life. So the attitudinal healing has a direct link with belief systems, and that's what we wanted to talk about tonight.
So give us an example of a belief system that is harmful to, a common belief system that is harmful to a lot of folks.
Well, there's thousands of them.
Yeah, but just give us an example.
One belief is that the belief that people do things that are unforgivable and deserve my punishment and deserve my withholding my love. That's a big one.
That's a huge one. Another one would be that my anger is justified and will get me what I want. I'm not saying we're not judging these belief systems. We're saying these are strongly embedded belief systems that we have.
And some of these just happen unconsciously almost.
Well, yes, unconsciously, meaning that it is happening to us. It is our belief system. And part of this work is bringing, as Freud said, the unconscious to the conscious. Like, are my belief systems running my life? Well, the answer is actually yes, it's running all of our lives. But is it the life that I want? And is it the way I want it to be? So if that's the case and I can bring it from my unconscious to my conscious, then my mind will be running it. Because, body follows mind. There's lots of belief systems that are negative about our bodies. I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm too short, I'm too tall, I'm the wrong sex. It's like, there's so many of them. And so those belief systems really run our lives, run our sociological and psychological systems in our interactions with other people.
So, for example, if one has a belief system that's harmful to them, let's say, for example, you gave the example of how something is unforgivable. How does unforgiveness hurt people?
Well, there are tremendous scientific studies now that show that when we're unforgiving, that we're holding on to a lot of anger, and we feel it's justified, and that somehow holding on to that anger is going to keep me safe. That's the belief of our fearful ego. And when we recognize that's not bringing me peace of mind, we begin to say, well, what other way can I look at that? Well, if you have peace of mind and your belief system is to hurt other people, and you don't believe that it's possible to live in the world where you're not having hurtful thoughts to yourself or other people, then something begins to happen when you believe that, yeah, I can start each day and I'm going to make my best job to be loving to another person rather than hurtful to another person. I don't want to feel that I can really hurt another person and it'll bring me something that I want. That's a new kind of, and that's what attitudinal healing does. It brings into awareness that when you find yourself peace, that then the act of forgiveness, which doesn't mean agreeing with what someone did, but it means letting go of the anger that we're holding on, because that's only hurting us and it's not doing anything to the other person.
So in direct response to your question, that unforgiving thoughts create stress, internal stress and external stressful environments. And there's mounds of research now that show that stress is really a killer at so many levels,
Right.
so that the ability for our bodies to heal or for our minds to heal is really impaired. So that's a direct correlation with a belief system that,
Right.
so if something's unforgivable, the person has set in their minds rigidly that this is unforgivable, so therefore I need to remain within the pain of this situation, for the rest of my life. So often people don't realize that, forgiveness is what sets them free. They always
Right.
think that it's going to set the other person free, but it's really setting them free.
Right. The forgiveness is of the other person is not for the other person. Right?
Oh, no,
Isn't
it's
that what you're
ultimately,
saying?
no, it's always for self. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so, on one hand, a belief system of unforgiveness sets off a cascade of reactions in the body that can actually be harmful to ourselves.
Literally.
High blood pressure.
Exactly.
I guess they talk about how your sterols rise, and that can cause, obesity, poor blood sugar control, rise in blood cholesterol, and actually can potentially result in high blood pressure and even heart attacks.
And death, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
literally stress is a
Right,
killer.
can cause
And
physical
that's
illness.
now a common
Right.
known fact
So,
in
right.
medicine. Right.
The United States has a belief system, the more people you put in jail, the safer your society is going to be. And it doesn't prove out that that's true. And yet we continue to
We
believe that.
continue to do that, right. So what would be the flip side of an unforgiveness belief system? How does someone, let's say I have a really bad grudge against a certain person, and it's just eaten away at me for years, and I got an ulcer from it, and I got high blood pressure. What would be a better belief system that might be better for me, and how does one change that unforgiveness belief system into one that's more adaptive or more beneficial?
Before you answer that, Jerry, or I answer it, I wanted to mention a belief system that holds that in place, not that releases it. And that a belief system around that would be not forgiving someone is like taking poison but expecting someone else to die. Okay,
that is really profound. Say that again.
Not forgiving someone is like taking poison but expecting someone else to die.
Right.
Because it will gradually kill you, if not physically, then emotionally. So I just wanted to put that in first to say that's like the nail that holds down the old belief system that you think, about the other person.
It's almost like
Right.
you think you're getting revenge on this person.
Right, but
when really you're getting revenge on yourself.
Exactly.
It's a boomerang.
It's a
It
boomerang.
comes right back and hits you in the face.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So, getting back to the other question, so what would be a belief system to replace the unforgiveness, and how does one go about that?
Well, it's having a different way of looking at the world, believing that there is a different way, number one. And two, believing that there are only two emotions. One is love, and the other is fear. And believing that when you, rather than seeing someone as verbally attacking you, to see that person's really fearful, giving us a call of help for love. The person's either loving, and it doesn't feel like they're loving, so you say they're fearful. I don't know what they're fearful about, but I know they're giving a call of help for love. And all of a sudden, automatically, our heart starts to open up, and rather than revenge, we feel a sense of compassion for that person, and we want to give love. And because love is really the number one healer in the world, that
Right.
love is the answer to all the problems that we have today and all that we think we might have tomorrow. So it's really seeing the value of experiencing love by loving each other, and changing the feelings of separation that most of us have when someone else has attacked us or didn't pay us money that they owe us, so we feel legitimate anger. But I give you an example. All of a sudden it occurs to me, many years ago, I had a patient who was a teenager, a pretty wild teenager. The family was divorced, and the husband lived in Texas, and the mother lived in Marin County. And after about 6 months, this teenager really changed a lot. And then they moved, but the husband never paid me any money. He never paid my bill. So I wrote him a couple of letters, and nothing happened. And then I began saying, you know, I could hold on to this anger, and it's sure not going to bring me peace, because I'm really attacking the guy, saying, hey, he didn't keep his agreement. But I want to be peaceful, and I'm going to let go of this. So I called him up and said, you know, I have no idea why you've not paid the bill, but I want to let you know that you're not going to get any more bills from me, and I'm going to say, I'm going to, you know, be at peace with you now, and just let go of it. And there was a big silence. He said, well, thank you. And to my surprise, 4 weeks later, I got a check for the whole bill that I had. And that wasn't part of what I was trying to ask for. I was trying to heal myself. But in giving him this, he found it helpful to do what would be reasonable for his heart to say. So
well, that's interesting.
So
I wonder what changed in him, or I wonder what made him.
I think what changed him because I didn't attack him.
And there you go.
I let go of the anger.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him as one with me. That, you know,
I think
we all have done things that that weren't legitimate in our lives, and I saw that and I let go of it, and I thought that brought a sense of oneness with each other. I had a different example when Love Is Letting Go of Fear came out, my first book, and I was lecturing in Australia, and then I was doing a radio show nationwide, and this guy didn't like it. Love Is Letting Go of Fear. He thought it was the worst book he ever read. And I decided, well, how am I going to deal with this? I'm not going to see him as attacking. Don't know why he's doing this, but I'm going to see him as fearful. And I'm just going to send love to him as we went through the radio station. I started to feel peace, and that's how it was handled. 2 days later, he called me and said that he had some personal problems and wondered if he could see me. And I thought, why is this guy coming?
Yeah, right, after he attacked you.
And I think it was because I did not attack him back. One of the principles we use, which is actually from A Course in Miracles, is that in my defenselessness is my safety.
Huh.
So I didn't attack him back, and I think he thought I was a safe person to be with. Because most people that I'm sure he deals with attack him back. Because that's what the ego would have us do. So we're doing our best to let go of the ego that believes in conflict, believes in punishment, believes in suffering, believes that there should be separation, and that anger and war will get us what we want.
That's like psychic Aikido or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's a great way
Yeah.
to put it.
Do you want to add to that, Dan?
No, I think you really completed that subject really well, Jerry. I was thinking, as you were talking, that one of the core belief systems that we have but rarely challenge or even think we have is who we think we are.
Yeah, that's an important one.
And that is like, well, am I a body born to die, and that's the end of the line? Or am I a spiritual being, you know? Am I a physical being having a spiritual experience? I mean, all these different ideas we have, and many of them are formulated, of course, by our cultural and religious beliefs. And what's amazing experience for so many people is that they have, and I myself have had this also, I have a belief system growing up in a certain tradition,
Right.
and then something happens that either, like in Jerry's case, sort of shattered that, and that turned him to atheism until his he was 50, or not just dissolution, or you outgrow it, or whatever it is. Some people would say, oh, well, that's lazy thinking, you should always stick with it. My experience is that it's a gift that we give to ourselves to challenge our own thinking. And my favorite expression for myself is, don't believe everything you think, Diane. You know, because my ego wants to think that everything I think is right? Everything I think is right. And therefore, in the world, you kind of manipulate around you to get everybody else to sort of think the same way. It's like, oh, I spent so many years of my life that way.
Right.
And I realized that, no, you're just as crazy as everybody else, you know, and you're thinking like monkey mind. And that I do challenge my belief systems now. And I encourage, you know, young people also to challenge what you believe. Challenge how you came to know this. I don't know what you should think. We never, ever suggest what someone should think or believe or if they should ever forgive. But we certainly know the blocks to keeping people stuck where they are. And again, if it's working for you, that's great. But if it's not, there's always another way of looking at the world. And that's what attitudinal healing's about.
That's a great belief system to adopt. Is
That there
there's
is another way.
There is another way. There's always another and a better way to look at the world.
Because in the fundamental mind, the mind that just is rigidly held says, this is the only way, and you make everything around you fit that, or else you break off and you experience the other, I call it, the other. The people that don't think the way that I do, or don't live the way that I do, and this separation that we create amongst ourselves.
There's me, and then there's everybody else.
There's the other.
There's the other person.
Right. Attitudinal healing, the first principle is that the essence of our being is love. And that means if my essence is love, and I mean with a capital L, then that means yours is too. So my choice is to be able to find that and see that in you. In order to do it, I have to clear my own stereotypes, my own prejudices, my own fear from the past, in order to be able to see you more clearly.
Well, isn't that part of the principles, or what the principles of attitudinal healing are about, at least to some extent? The 12 principles of attitudinal healing, aren't they another way to start to adjust our belief systems so we see the world in a different way?
Well, and again, it opens our belief system. It doesn't say what you should think. It's this work is, the reason we've been invited to 60 countries is because it's cross-cultural. We don't interfere with someone's belief systems. We don't suggest what they should believe, but we show them what their belief system is, help mirror that to them. And for those of our listeners that are not familiar with the principles, they can go on to our website at AH for Attitudinal Healing, ahinternational.org, and the principles are there along with many of the ways that attitudinal healing has been innovatively used around the world.
Okay, we'll say that again. It's AH for Attitudinal Healing. It's ahinternational.org. And actually, the sister site for local attitudinal healing is ahhawaii.org.
Right.
Yeah. And Terry, I'm thinking of an example that happened when Diane and I were, it must have been 15, 20 years ago, giving a large lecture with a Rinpoche, and someone in the audience was really angry at some of the things he and Diane and I had said, and was just pretty volatile for about 5-8 minutes, and then he was quiet.
He had very fundamental views from his own
and he was
religion.
waiting for me to say something, and I said, well, first of all, I want to let you know I respect what you said. And secondly, I'm not here to try to change you or change your beliefs. We believe that we open the door to some aspects that maybe not been talked about, but it's up to the person to decide whether they're going to go through that door or not. And he sat down, and I thought he was going to just leave. He stayed for the whole meeting and came and thanked us for the meeting. So what Diane says is true, that the biggest gift that the universe has given us is the ability to choose what we put in our mind, what thoughts and attitudes we put. But we grow up in a culture that thinks these are all things almost genetic. Mm-hmm. Diane was brought up as a Catholic, and she thought that being guilty was kind of genetic. I was brought up in the Jewish faith, and for sure I knew that was genetic, and I had a belief system that could never be gotten rid of. But when I changed my belief system and began to let go of it, I wrote a book called, Goodbye to Guilt. It was really for me to remind myself that we can learn to let go of guilt, because guilt and love cannot coexist at the same time. And yet so many of us are going around with a system, a belief that I'm not good enough to be loved. And a system that says, I deserve to be punished myself. So I'm condemning. If I condemn myself, then I'll make a better golf player. And that's not true.
But, yeah.
If we learn from our mistakes playing golf and do that differently and let go of our
But some of
guilt-
that guilt is embedded in some religious beliefs, some cultural beliefs, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
and the guilt that we talk about is not the, doesn't have to do with conscience. It's guilt as the psychological manipulative tool that we use to try to control another person or ourselves. And that's what we're talking about. And the only reason, and when we hold on to guilt, it's interesting. I always think of guilt as the hideout place, the place where we hide out. Because if you feel guilty, it's kind of like, okay, I'm guilty, so I'm not doing anything. I'm guilty, I'm not doing anything. I'm guilty, I'm feeling badly, not. It's like, okay, when are you going to do something about it? You know, so it's basically, we say goodbye to guilt, like, what do you do something about it, you know, and move on from it, because it really is a place to hide out. It's a place where and it's like worry. You know, worrying doesn't work, unfortunately. All the time, we think we relate. Our belief system is that if I worry, it's because I care. And every parent in the world has probably experienced this. I worry about my kids because I care about my kids. No, wait a minute. You care about your kids and you worry about your kids, but they actually aren't related. You know, because all the worrying in the world by every parent in the world has never changed a single action, ever. So it's, again, a place that we hide out. It doesn't mean we're not concerned. It doesn't mean we don't do something about it. But sticking in the worry is, again, it's a belief system.
So how does someone change that from their belief system of worry and their belief system of guilt? I think that's a challenge.
They start seeing no value in the anger, because the anger doesn't bring me peace of mind. Mm-hmm. They see it as hurting themselves. And they begin to see that what they see with their physical eyes is really a projection of something in their mind. So an example of this occurred, I think, a week ago when Di and I were on a Skype call to China, and the director and some of the people working with her had some conflict. And one of the guys said, well, I'm really very angry at the director because she's so controlling. She controls everything, and there's no way of expressing yourself and feeling a sense of mutual respect. And then I said to him, well, sometimes what we see in another person is something in ourselves that we don't want to see. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you a question. Do you ever think you have any control issues? There's a long silence. And say, yeah, I have a lot of them. And then he started to talk about that. He said, you know, I can see now. I was seeing something in myself that I was angry about, but I was putting it on her. And he began really talking about loving her and hugging her, even though she's in another place, in another city. And I think that's something we need to look at, that what we see, perception, is only a mirror, not a fact. Mm. And yet we have a belief system that what I see tells me what's going on. If I interpret this guy's behavior and I see that he's dishonest, then I'm only going to see him as dishonest.
Right. So that's actually another adaptive belief system, is to see our perception of others as really
a projection.
A projection. It's like what you see in others may well be a mirror.
Well, it's not may well be.
Yeah.
It's like it's one of those
Right.
absolute things,
Right.
but you go, oh, nuts, this
Right.
is true all the time.
But the thing is, when people start to adopt that belief system, now their perspective
Well, they
changes.
start to take responsibility for what
Right.
they're seeing, and that allows them to be able to understand their own internal world.
I think you misunderstood me. I didn't say maybe.
Yeah.
I said it is a mirror.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And when we start to really believe that,
Perception's a
Right.
mirror,
then
not
we
a
start
fact.
realizing that healing is not changing other people.
Right. It's
It's not changing form out there. It's changing the thoughts and seeing value in changing the thoughts. So we can choose, if you will, to see and experience love rather than fear. Most of what we do in making decisions in our lives come from fear. Believing that the assumptions the past will predict the future. Well, if we heal the past and be able to erase the past, if you will, what true forgiveness does, then we're in a whole new place of finding peace and finding ways to come from love rather than fear. We can choose to be a love finder rather than a fault finder.
And actually, one of my spiritual teachers always said, you know, if you're looking for fault, you'll always find it.
That's
And if
right.
you're
You'll
looking
always
for
find it.
goodness, you will always find that.
Exactly.
You know.
There's a woman that used to volunteer at our center, and then she went back east and got married and had 3 kids. And I used to talk to her maybe once or twice a year. And one time she called me and said, Jerry, I'm in spite of the fact that I have children and everything, I'm just have had it with my husband, and I'm getting a divorce. I said, okay, well, that's what you think what you want. That's what you think is going to make you peaceful. And she had a big laundry list, like a toilet roll of problems about that she hated and fault finding. And I said, before you go to the lawyer and make your final decision, would you be willing to spend 1 week of only focusing on being a love finder with no qualifications? And she thought for a while, I guess I could do that. I said, well, no, not guess. Either do it or you don't.
You do it or
okay,
don't.
I'll do it. And she called me a week later and said, Jerry, you can't believe the change that happened to my husband this last week. And then she began to
I
laugh.
love that story.
And then she began to laugh and said, I know he didn't change. It was because I had changed. And their relationship got healed because
It's
they both
amazing.
started to be love finders rather than fault finders.
But I think people really need to hear that.
Yeah, because it depends on what you're
Right,
looking for.
Right.
Right.
And I want to say this because you always say it. I'm bringing up one of my favorite quotes that I think is one of yours is you say the light in you is all that I see, and it's but a reflection of the light in me. And
That's the
I'll
18th principle in the mini course for life.
Yeah, and I will
Yeah.
never forget that because that's the same. It's kind of part of the same principle that people are a mirror.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly. That's it. So we really these are some core beliefs. So one that we've touched on is that at a core level, do you really believe you deserve the right to be happy?
Mm-hmm.
So I think if anyone's writing anything down in our audience, I'd write that one down.
Right.
As a belief system, do you really believe you deserve the right to be happy? It's amazing how many people say no. More people say no than say yes.
That's amazing.
Is it? Yes. And then it's a degree, 100%, 90%, 80%. And ask yourself, why is it at that? And so because as you believe, you will so create your life. You will
Right.
make choices that support your belief system. That's the thing about belief systems. You want to expose it because otherwise it's running you like a train behind you, but you don't even know what's happening.
Right.
So to give us more choices for growth in our lives, that's it. And another one is, one is do you really believe you deserve the right to be happy? The other is, am I good enough? And this, of course, gets molded through many aspects of our lives, but usually when we're young, in the first primary years of our lives, from birth on. And it's amazing how many people say, I don't think I am. Or if
Right.
they don't know the answer, just
Right.
look at your life. Look at the choices that you're making, and that will let you know whether you think you're good enough. And I know when I first heard it, I was like, oh, wait, do I really think that? And I thought, well, if I really think that, how come I'm choosing this and that
Right.
and the other thing? And that's been like a guiding light for me. Wait a minute. What am I creating in my life? There's a lot of things we don't have control over in the external world,
course.
clearly. But we always have control about how we experience them. We don't have control about making them go one way or another. Some things we do, some things we don't. But how we experience it, that's what we have the choices. That's the wealth of our free will. And that's
Right.
a core
Right, and that's
of
actually-
challenging belief
right,
systems.
and that's actually the magic of the concept of power to choose, right?
Yes,
You
right,
have
which
the
is our
power
school
to
programs,
choose how
our prison program,
the power to choose how you
How you're going to
perceive,
experience
right,
life.
how you're going to
right?
experience life. Right,
Exactly, yes.
Right.
One of the fundamental beliefs that gets us in trouble from our standpoint in doing attitudinal healing is the belief that our bodies are our true identity. And a belief that sooner or later we're going to be hurt, sooner or later we're going to be sick, sooner or later someone's going to be unfaithful, sooner or later the person that we trusted in politics turned out to not be telling the
Right.
truth.
You're expecting bad things, right?
It's sort of like my parents used to believe, they did till they died actually, that yesterday's awful, tomorrow's horrendous, and tomorrow's going to be worse.
Oh.
Yesterday's awful,
Yeah.
today's horrendous, tomorrow's going to be worse.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And that's a belief system that you don't have any place to find joy, because you feel there to suffer. That suffering will get you something what you want. We have a belief system that when we say the first principle is the essence of our being is love, that we're more than just these bodies. Bodies come and go, they're just costumes. But if we really believe that we're a light of the world that comes from our source, and that we're here to bring light into a world that's suffering from darkness, and suffering from people hurting each other, then something begins to, because when we start in a consciousness of giving to another person, what happens is we're not thinking about our bodies, and healing starts to take place.
Well, let me
Get closer.
make another point related to that and talk about how our belief system can help people through grieving. Because, of course, if you start thinking, if you think that this is all we are and someone's about to die and you lose someone close to you, that's much more devastating than if you are of the belief that the body is just, like you said, a costume, and that person whose essence is love is always going to be there. Doesn't that help people through the
Yes,
grieving process?
we know of a person whose wife is dying right now, and is very angry.
Mhm.
He's a very controlling person,
Right.
and not able to control her not dying.
And he thought she was going to die first. They both thought that she
Right.
would die, that he would die first.
Yeah.
Sure. A lot of men believe that and expect that,
Yes.
especially if their wife is a few years
So
younger.
what's happening to the wife is that she's hearing his anger all the time.
Yeah.
And one of the things we try to help people do during those last stages of people's life here is to say the most important thing you can do is to be gentle.
Right.
The most important you can do is to give your love.
Right.
The most important thing to do is have eyes that are soft. The most important thing to do is to remember the beauty of silence with a person, holding someone's hand, and just being there may be more important than whatever you can see. But for sure, the most important thing to do is not to demonstrate fear and anger, but to demonstrate love, unconditional love, and oneness with each other. And to know in your own heart, hopefully, to choose to know that that person's light, that's the only thing that's real, and your light are really one and the same. And that will always be there.
But isn't this a great example of how fear can come across as anger?
Yes.
Because this person must be very fearful that
Yes.
the
Yeah, it's just a form of fear.
that his life partner
Of 60-plus years.
may soon be departed.
You know, anger also at the world, but anger at himself for not being able to stop her death from being
Right.
from being
Which is, of course, well, a little bit of nonsense. Everyone is going to die at some point, at least physically. And it may be helpful. I think it's certainly helpful if...
But the ego doesn't
Right.
see that as nonsense.
Right.
They see that that's appropriate for me to be angry.
Right.
The ego says fear is what's more powerful than love. Attitudinal healing says love is more powerful than fear.
Right.
Yeah, but that belief system, you see, I think a lot of people, not everybody has the belief system that they're going to die, because a lot of people especially in our culture, are in denial about ever thinking about the fact.
Right.
And
They
so
don't even wanna
therefore,
think
by
about it.
not thinking about it, they think it's not going to happen. And then you find yourself in a situation where it's like, it's horrendous what happens with a lot of families that are so
Right.
unprepared for
Right.
death. And so we often say that, facing death is the only way to really truly live.
There you go.
Thinking
Wow.
about it and facing it and confronting it in your own belief systems. One of my favorite books, I've actually read twice, which is amazing for me, is Dr. Eben Alexander's book, Proof of Heaven, a neurosurgeon who had no belief in afterlife. and for 7 days was in beyond a coma. And now, mind you, he had all of his neurosurgeon friends monitoring every minute of the way, and he had no brain matter left at all. And what he saw and he experienced and came back, it's really, I highly recommend it for folks.
I'm going to have to.
You got to be brain dead not to be
Right.
affected by this book.
Right. I'm going to have to look at that one.
Yeah, Proof of
Right.
Heaven.
I think it's interesting to point out that the work that we had started Attitudinal Healing was with children who were dying of cancer.
Right.
There was a time that I was still fearful of dying. I was an alcoholic and drinking myself to death, and yet I was scared of dying. And working with these children and their parents taught me another way of looking at life. They helped me not be fearful to die.
Yeah, your work is legendary, working with children with catastrophic illness, with kids who actually have to face up to their own mortality at such a young age. And some of them, some of the writings I saw that you helped to bring out in these kids were amazing, that these young kids have so much wisdom.
They really do. They really...
Yeah, you had a book out that it was called Advice to Doctors and Other Big People from Kids, or something along those lines.
Right.
It's amazing what these kids can find inside them.
And teach us.
And teach all of us.
And
Right.
that's how Jerry got over his fear of dying. And I think also that
if a kid is so wise, why am I not that wise? It's amazing.
Well, they're forced with
Right.
it. And now that was
Sure.
pioneering 40 years ago, and
Right.
now, of course, it's very common for kids to be told
But
what's
if
happening.
we see everyone as our teacher,
Right.
then when you're driving a car and you're late for an appointment and the car ahead of you is going very, very slow, you have a choice of getting impatient and anger and really upset by the time you get to work at that driver, or to see that driver is a teacher today of myself being patient. He's going to be a teacher of patience
Right.
for me, and not
It's
for
another
me,
belief
and
system.
not for me to be. And so I'm going to get to the office feeling perfectly well and not frustrated because I'm not attacking someone. So it's all about love again, Terry. It's all about love. Remind ourselves that love is the answer to all of our problems. Like we wrote a book called that.
Love is the
Yes,
answer.
love is the answer. Yes. And by the way, just for the listeners and the viewers, Dr. Jampolsky and Dr. Cirincione have written about 14 or 15 books. There's probably the best-known book is Love is Letting Go of Fear, about 5 million copies, did you say?
Yeah, just got
Yeah.
reprinted again, and it's
Yeah,
in
it's
many
amazing.
languages.
But
It's in about 36 languages, I think.
Right.
right, yeah. But that's a book I think that's a must-read for everyone.
Thank you.
Doesn't matter.
You know, one of the big belief systems I wanted to touch on for a minute too, Jerry and Terry, is that one that we actually don't think about a lot, and yet we think about all the time. It's more unconscious, and that is the beliefs that we have about the past, the present, and the future. And most of our belief systems hold the past in something concrete and the future in something concrete. And the reality is that, where is the past? The past is what remains of the past is what remains in our minds.
Right.
And
It's just a memory.
Exactly. And the future's the future is all made up. There
Right.
is no future, actually.
Right.
It's just
There's
when
only
an
the
experience
present.
becomes the present. And so when you separate, because so much of our fear is based on the fear of the future, of what will or will not occur, the pain from the past of what has or hasn't occurred. And it seems like that is what formulates our lives and our levels of happiness. And unless we realize that there actually is a way to see it differently, not using denial, but to really make a choice about changing the way we see what occurred, that's the way we can actually change the past. The past itself isn't going to change at all.
Right.
But in the present, our belief about the
Right.
past,
Or
and
our
that's,
perception,
that's,
or the way
that's
we look at
attitudinal
it.
healing. It's like, wait a minute, I
Right.
have the power to choose the thoughts I have in my mind, and to see someone who did something horrific to me, that I could see them now as someone who was really fearful. ill or whatever, and not making excuses for them, not saying they weren't responsible.
And not agreeing with what
Not
happened.
agreeing with what happened, but being
Right.
able to shift it. And what that does is that doesn't let them off the hook. That releases me from it. And the same with our fear about the future. Though we could stay up, I mean, probably most human beings have had the experience at one time or another of being so anxious about something that they wake up in the middle of the night.
Oh.
Right? We've had that ourselves,
Yeah,
right,
I've
Jerry?
had
You,
that
you
happen,
wake up and your
sure.
mind is racing.
Right.
It's like, oh
What
my
am I
God.
gonna do? What's
Right,
gonna happen
right.
tomorrow?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
right.
and that's all worry and anxiety.
Right.
And so how do we deal with that? It's a belief system about what power you give to that. The only way that for me, that I can ever get to sleep is to say, wait a minute. I could stay up for the next 2 hours worrying, but it's not going to change an iota of anything. And so therefore, I am not going to give this the power in this moment to keep me awake. And then I go right back to sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, I also ask for a resolution to come. I'm open to a resolution. And I always find another way of seeing what's going on when I wake up.
I'd like to ask your listening audience, Terry, that use your imagination for a moment
Mhm.
and imagine that everyone in the world, for the next 5 minutes, we're going to give up all their judgments. What would happen? I believe what would happen, since each one is taking the responsibility to let go of their judgment, is that everyone would start to feel peaceful, and there were people joining each other in that peace. So I think it's really important to recognize there's a choice of whether we're going to keep on judging people, deciding who's guilty and who's innocent, which are really judging ourselves,
Right.
and recognize that when we put ourselves in a spiritual consciousness, a higher consciousness where we feel one with our source, what we're doing is then letting go of the pain of the past, letting go of seeing any values and hurting anybody, and feeling a sense of silence that's golden, whether there's no pain, no one's getting hurt, no bodies. It's a whole different belief system. So we're just suggesting tonight that to explore. We're not telling what belief system to have, but which one gives you more value in terms of feeling more loving to yourself and other people, which gives you more value in feeling that sense of inner peace, or does it give you more value to holding on to your feeling that you have a lot of enemies, there'll always be wars, and there's always going to be war in yourself. It's letting go of that. It's interesting enough, we did a lot of work with children, Teachers of Peace, some years ago, and children under the age of 10 really believe it's possible to have peace in this world.
That's great.
But you get older than that, the ego comes in,
Right.
and the kids are 16, they go, oh no, there'll never be peace in this world. They're always going to, because they base their reality based on the past, predicting the future.
Right.
So one of the things that we encourage people to do is examine what assumptions we make. And maybe it's helpful to let go of the assumptions we're making and let that inner voice of love come to us and tell us what to think, say, and do from a love standpoint rather than the ego. I like to think of a circle like this, and this half is the ego, this half is love, the love from our source. And this part of the ego is always going to tempt us to be upset with ourselves, to condemn ourselves, to find enemies out there, to find reasons to hurt people. And this part over here says, love is unconditional. No matter what,
Right.
it's important to be able to love each other and ourselves because that's what our source does.
Right.
And our job here, we think, is to put light in this world of darkness so that we can, again, experience our home, that home that's within our Creator.
Right. And I think it would be great if people adopted the belief system that the purpose or the reason the Almighty placed us on earth was to give as much love as we could while
You
we're
gotta
here, to as
challenge,
many people
that's
here.
it. And challenge your belief systems that
Right.
don't tell you that. And
Right.
don't believe everything you think.
Right.
You know,
Don't believe everything you think. That's a good one.
I think we're
I'm a psychiatrist.
Uh-huh.
I was taught to make diagnoses. This person's neurosis, this person's psychotic, this person's crazy, what have you. As a psychiatrist who has a spiritual longing today, I would say we're crazy when we're not experiencing ourselves as love and giving that love away.
Hmm.
Now, if you look carefully at that definition, It means most of us, including me, are crazy
We're
most of the time. But I think it's something to think about, that much of what we do is really insane. Because it's hurting others and hurting
Sure.
ourselves.
Right.
Insanity means when we're really doing our best job at experiencing ourselves as love, as light, and seeing a sense of oneness with each other rather than the separation, letting go of our prejudices that tend to make us feel so separate while we're attacking minorities, we're
Right.
attacking people who are homosexual, we're attacking people for all kinds of reasons.
You know, it makes me think as why you and Diane have been attracted to Hawaii. You know, Hawaii's way is the spirit of aloha.
That's
Exactly.
right. Oh, you better
And
believe
that's
it.
exactly what
More than
you're-
anywhere in the world
right,
that we've
and it's
been.
like, and that's why you've been. It's almost
It's the home
perfect.
of our soul.
It's
yes.
almost perfect that you claim this as your second home, because it's the home of the spirit of aloha.
I like to think
Of-
I was
right.
Hawaiian in my last life.
Right, I think you were, and both of you, because the true spirit of aloha, unconditional, universal love, dwells in both of you, and you're spreading the spirit of aloha all around the world through your wonderful work, your books, and all the many centers and programs for attitudinal healing all the way around the world. You know, one thing you said reminded me, I think I saw a quote from the Dalai Lama, who said, you were saying something about how everybody's worries about today, and then they think they're never going to die. Well, the Dalai Lama, part of the quote was, people worry so much about today, worry so much about tomorrow that they never live for today. And I'm paraphrasing, people worry about tomorrow so much that they never live for today. They think they will never die, and then they die never having lived.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
very fascinating.
Yeah.
One thing we
So
didn't
that's-
talk about, but and we're going to say this right now, love is the way we walk in gratitude, and gratitude is such an important part of healing.
Yes, yes.
Right, gratitude.
Thank you
Right.
so much for being here, having us on your program tonight.
Oh, no, thank you for being here. Yeah, they're saying we have 3 minutes
Oh,
left.
that's marvelous. So maybe
yeah,
some last thoughts.
I want to hear some final thoughts about belief systems and how they affect your life. Maybe first Jerry and then Diane. Maybe for a minute or so, and then Diane can
Well,
kind
I
of
think
sum
that-
up.
Well, we have a session with Carlos Santana and his wife every day, and A Course in Miracles. And he mentioned the other day, he's kind of a wordsmith. He likes to make things simple. You remember what he said then?
You want me to say it?
I'll say it.
No.
He said people are either spiritual.
Oh, no, that's not
Oh.
exact. He said, we are either divine beings or we're full of shit.
That's funny.
That summed it up, I think. You know, it's really a belief system is like, who do we think we are? Who do we
Right.
think we are? Who do we think we are? Who do
Right.
we think we are? Yeah.
Right, and we are all divine beings.
We are.
Yeah, we're
Absolutely.
kind of
Without
a
exception.
baby, we can look at
Right.
what we see in the world as just a crazy dream that we're in, and it's
Right.
time to wake up from the dream and see what is truly true, what doesn't really change, is the love that we were born with. That's our DNA. Happiness is our DNA.
Right.
We're born with that.
Right.
It's not that we find that out there in the external world in form.
That's what we are.
It means that's what we are. And we need to let go of the blocks of judgments and unforgiveness that allows us to feel that sense of oneness.
All right. All right. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Jampolsky, Dr. Diane Cirencioni, for being on this show. I wanted to let the viewers and the listeners know that Dr. Jampolsky, Dr. Diane Cirencioni are actually, Dr. Jampolsky is the founder of Attitudinal Healing. Dr. Diane Cirencioni is the executive director of the Attitudinal Healing International. Their website is ahinternational.org. That's AH for Attitudinal Healing, international.org. The sister organization locally is ahhawaii.org. I encourage everyone to look into the many writings of Dr. Jampolsky and Dr. Cerencioni, including Love is Letting Go of Fear, Teach Only Love, Forgiveness is the Greater Sealer of All, and many, many other wonderful writings that they've put out. Go to their website. It's all of their books are listed there. And if you are somewhere where there's an attitudinal healing group or center nearby, look them up and learn how your belief systems can change your life.
I forgot to slip in that Dr. Vicki Schneider is the new director of the center
Right, yes.
in Hawaii, and she's going to really take the center very far.
Yeah. And thank you, Dr. Jerry Jampolsky, Dr. Cerencioni. Thank you, and aloha, everyone.